Hey guys, tonight we slip into the dusty, sun-scorched world of ancient Assyria, where the air hums with the clatter of chariots and the faint crunch of sandals on gravel. You're standing in a sprawling military camp, the horizon glowing orange as dawn creeps over the Mesopotamian plains. The scent of barley bread and roasting meat wafts from cooked fires. But something else catches your attention. A peculiar unit of soldiers, their baskets brimming with dates, nuts, and glistening jars of honey. These aren't your typical warriors. They're the King's Snack Army, an elite crew dedicated to hauling royal treats across empires. You're about to dive into their bizarre, fascinating world, where one misstep could mean a hungry king and a very bad day. Spoiler: you probably won't survive the logistics of keeping a monarch's tummy happy in 700 BCE. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I love knowing where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink, adjusting to the dim light of dawn, as the Assyrian camp buzzes around you. Tents flap gently in the breeze, and soldiers sharpen bronze swords, their chatter a low hum. But your eyes lock onto a group moving with purpose near the camp's edge. They're not hauling spears or shields. They're balancing wicker baskets and clay jars, their steps deliberate, like they're carrying the crown jewels. These are the snack carriers, a unit so vital the king's mood, and maybe the empire's fate, hinges on their success. You wander closer, sand crunching underfoot, and catch a glimpse of their load. Plump figs, roasted almonds, and some weird, glistening thing that might be pickled fish. It's a mobile pantry for a king who never stops conquering, and you're about to see what makes this operation tick. The Assyrians, around 900 to 600 BCE, were the ancient world's military juggernaut, their empire stretching from modern-day Iraq to Egypt. They built palaces, ziggurats, and a war machine that terrified neighbors. But even badass conquerors get peckish, and Assyrian kings like Ashurbanipal or Sennacherib didn't just eat. They feasted, even on campaign. Historical records, like cuneiform tablets, describe royal meals with dozens of dishes, from spiced lamb to exotic fruits. Feeding a king in the middle of a war zone wasn't easy, so they created a dedicated snack army. You're standing in their world now, watching them sort baskets with the precision of a modern catering crew. One guy, sweat beading on his brow, checks a clay tablet, probably an inventory to ensure the king's favorite sesame cakes aren't running low. You can't help but smirk. This is peak Assyrian flex, a whole unit just for snacks. But here's the quirky bit. These snack carriers weren't just random grunts. Some sources suggest they were hand-picked, almost like royal chefs, with skills in food preservation and presentation. One wild tidbit from a lesser-known tablet hints they even had a guy whose sole job was to fan the snacks to keep flies off during marches. Imagine that resume. Expert fly fanner, Assyrian snack corps, 701 BCE. You chuckle, but it makes sense. Nobody wants a cranky king munching on buggy dates. The snack army's role was serious business, and you're starting to get why. A hungry ruler might make rash decisions, like, say, sacking a city just because his tummy's rumbling. You glance at the carriers, their faces taut with focus, and feel the weight of their gig. Historians still argue whether the snack army was a practical necessity or a symbol of Assyrian excess. Some say it was logistics genius, keeping the king and his court fed during endless campaigns. Others call it decadence. Proof the Assyrians were so extra, they turned snacks into a military branch. You're not sure who's right, but as you watch a carrier gingerly adjust a jar of what smells like fermented goat cheese, you lean toward excess. The guy catches your eye, and for a second, you swear he's sizing you up like you might sneak a figure. You step back, hands raised. Nobody needs that kind of trouble in camp. The sun's climbing now, painting the tents gold, and the snack army's gearing up for the day's march. You fall and step behind them, curious about who these guys really are and how they landed the weirdest job in Assyria. Their baskets sway as they move, each step calculated to keep the goods intact. You notice the baskets aren't just wicker. They're lined with reeds and sealed with some kind of resin, probably to keep moisture out. Smart, considering they're marching through dusty plains and river valleys. You overhear a carrier mutter about the king's mood and how a late delivery last week got someone flogged. Yikes! You're starting to grasp the stakes here. These snacks aren't just food. They're morale, status, maybe even strategy. You pass a soldier polishing a spear, who gives the snack crew a mock salute, and you stifle a laugh. Bet he's jealous of their cushy gig, or maybe he's just glad he's not stuck babysitting the royal picnic. The camp's alive now, horns blaring in the distance, signaling the army's about to move. You stick with the snack carriers, eager to see what's next in their bizarre world. The air's getting warmer, and you wipe sweat from your brow, wondering how these guys manage in their tunics and sandals. The snack army's pace is steady, their chatter minimal, like they've done this 1,000 times. You spot a kid, no older than 14, lugging a smaller basket, probably an apprentice. He's struggling but keeps up, and you feel a pang of respect. This isn't just about snacks. It's about discipline, duty, and maybe a touch of absurdity. You're hooked now, ready to trail them deeper into the Assyrian war machine, where even the smallest almond carries the weight of an empire. The march is starting, and you're right there with them, sandals kicking up dust, eyes on those precious baskets. You're trudging alongside the snack army now, the Assyrian camp fading into a haze of dust as the sun climbs higher. The air smells of dry earth and sweat, with a faint whiff of something sweet. Maybe those honey-drizzled dates you glimpsed earlier. The snack carriers, these elite haulers of royal treats, move like a well-oiled machine, their baskets swaying in rhythm with their steps. You're close enough to see the calluses on their hands, the way their eyes scan the ground for rocks that might trip them up. These aren't just porters. They're the unsung heroes of the king's appetite, trained to deliver culinary perfection across deserts and battlefields. You're about to meet them up close, to understand what makes this crew tick and why their job is both ridiculous and revered. The landscape stretches flat and endless, dotted with scrubby bushes and the occasional palm. You fall in step with a wiry carrier named, well, you don't know his name, but let's call him Fig Guy, because he's cradling a basket of plump, dusty figs like they're his firstborn. His tunic's stained with sweat, but his posture's ramrod straight, like he's been drilled to never slouch. You notice his belt, hung with tiny clay seals, probably markers for the king's personal stash. These guys aren't random laborers. They're specialists, handpicked for a job that sounds like a joke, but carries the weight of royal favor. You smirk, imagining explaining this to your friends back home. Yeah, I hung out with the Assyrian snack special forces. Historically, the Assyrians were obsessed with order, their military machine a marvel of discipline. Cuneiform records from Nineveh describe specialized units for everything: charioteers, archers, even scribes who tallied loot. The snack army, though less documented, fits this mold. They weren't just schlepping food. They were part of the king's inner circle, trusted to keep him satisfied during grueling campaigns. You watch Fig Guy adjust his load, his fingers deftly tucking a stray fig back into place. It's clear he's trained for this, maybe for years. You wonder if he dreamed of swinging a sword instead, but the way he moves, quick, precise, tells you he takes pride in this gig. Or maybe he's just terrified of screwing up. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some tablets suggest these carriers had to memorize the king's mood swings to tailor snack deliveries. Like, if the king was grumpy after a bad battle, they'd prioritize his favorite sesame cakes over, say, dried fish. It's like ancient catering with a side of psychology. You picture Fig Guy as a snack whisperer, reading the king's scowl and thinking, better double up on almonds today. You stifle a chuckle, but it's not hard to see the logic. A happy king is a focused king, and in Assyria, focus meant winning wars. You glance at another carrier, this one hauling jars of what smells like fermented yogurt. He's muttering to himself, maybe praying the lids don't pop open in this heat. You don't blame him, one spill and he's toast. Historians still argue whether the snack army was a logistical necessity or a flex of Assyrian power. Some say it was practical. Kings needed constant fuel to strategize, and a dedicated food crew ensured that. Others argue it was pure extravagance, a way to flaunt wealth by making even snacks a military operation. You're leaning toward the flex theory as you watch a carrier pause to wipe dust off a jar with the care of a jeweler polishing a gem. This is next level extra, even for Assyria. You catch Fig Guy's eye, and he gives you a quick nod, like you're in on the mission now. You're not, but you play along, keeping pace as the column marches on. The training for these guys must have been intense. You imagine them practicing in some dusty courtyard, balancing baskets while dodging obstacles or running laps under a trainer's glare. Maybe they had to carry jars of water without spilling a drop, like some ancient version of a waiter's tray test. You notice a younger carrier, barely a teen, struggling with a smaller basket. He's got the same clay seals on his belt, but his steps are less sure, his face pinched with effort. You feel for him. This job's no joke. One wrong move, and the king's lunch is cactus. You overhear Fig Guy murmur something encouraging to the kid, and it hits you. There's camaraderie here, a shared sense of purpose, even if that purpose is keeping the royal snack game on point. The sun's brutal now, beating down on your head, and you're starting to envy the carrier's headscarves. They don't complain, though. Just keep moving, their basket steady. You spot a guy in the back, older, with a limp but a steely focus. He's carrying what looks like a sealed clay pot, maybe wine or olive oil. You wonder how long he's been at this, if he's seen kings come and go. The snack army's not just about food. It's about loyalty, precision, and maybe a touch of insanity. You pass a regular soldier, his spear glinting, who gives the snack crew a sidelong glance. You can't tell if it's respect or pity, but you're betting he's glad he's not stuck hauling figs through a desert. You grin, but he's never had to worry about the king's snack mood swings. The column slows as the terrain shifts, the ground turning rocky. You watch the carriers adjust, their steps more cautious. Fig Guy's muttering again, probably cursing the uneven path. You're starting to get why this job's a big deal. It's not just about carrying stuff. It's about delivering perfection under pressure. The king's out there somewhere, maybe in a fancy tent or on a throne carried by grunts, waiting for his mid-March munchies. And these guys, these snack elites, are the ones who make it happen. You're hooked, ready to stick with them, to see how they keep this absurd operation running. The dust swirls, the baskets sway, and you keep walking, one step closer to the heart of Syria's weirdest military unit. You're still trailing the snack army, the Mesopotamian sun now a relentless hammer overhead, turning the air into a shimmering haze. The crunch of sandals on gravel mixes with the creak of baskets, and the occasional grunt from a carrier adjusting their load. You're deep in the rhythm of their march, watching these elite snack haulers navigate the rocky terrain like they're balancing the fate of Assyria itself. But now, you're zeroing in on the king himself, the guy whose bottomless appetite makes this whole operation necessary. You're about to witness the sheer extravagance of his feast, the kind of meals that demand a mobile pantry shadowing him across empires. It's absurd, it's glorious, and you're right there, squinting through the dust to catch a glimpse of royal gluttony. The column veers toward a massive tent, its crimson and gold fabric billowing like a mirage. You hear music, lyres and drums, faint but lively, and smell something rich, like roasted meat and spices. This must be the king's temporary court, set up in the middle of nowhere, because Assyrian rulers don't just camp, They recreate palaces on the move. You slip closer, dodging a stern-looking guard who's eyeing you like you might swipe a royal olive. Inside the tent, it's a sensory overload. Silk cushions, bronze lamps flickering, and tables groaning under platters of food. There's the king, let's say Sennacherib, lounging on a throne, his beard oiled to perfection, popping what looks like a grape into his mouth. You smirk. Grapes in a desert? That's the snack army's doing. Assyrian kings were no strangers to excess. Historical records, like the banquet descriptions in Ashurbanipal's library, paint a picture feast with hundreds of dishes. Roast gazelle, stuffed pigeons, even imported fish from the Persian Gulf. These weren't just meals. They were power moves, showing off wealth and control. On campaign, the king couldn't exactly slum it with stale bread, so the snack army trailed him, ensuring his table stayed lavish. You watch a carrier, maybe your pal Fig Guy from earlier, deliver a basket of glistening dates to a servant, who arranges them artfully on a silver tray. The king barely glances at it, but you know that basket's journey was an odyssey of sweat and precision. You're starting to get why these carriers are so intense. One bad date, and heads might roll. Here's the quirky bit. Some sources hint the king's snacks weren't just for eating. They were props in royal rituals. A lesser-known cuneiform text suggests certain foods, like pomegranates or honey cakes, were offered to gods before the king munched them, like a divine taste test. You picture Sennacherib tossing a fig to a priest, who mutters a blessing before it's deemed king-worthy. It's half sacred, half ridiculous, and you can't help but grin. You're tempted to whisper, "Hope the gods like their cut," but the guard's still glaring, so you keep quiet. The tent's buzzing now, servants darting around, and you notice the snack carriers hovering at the edges, ready to replenish anything the king fancies. It's like a high-stakes buffet, and they're the backstage crew. Historians still argue whether these lavish feasts were strategic or just indulgent. Some say the king's meals boosted army morale, showing soldiers the empire's wealth even in war. Others call it wasteful, arguing the resources spent on royal snacks could have fed entire garrisons. You're torn as you watch a servant pour wine from a clay jar, probably hauled by that limping carrier you saw earlier, into a golden cup. It's impressive, sure, but you can't shake the thought of all the manpower behind one sip. You catch a whiff of something sweet, maybe barley cakes, and your stomach growls. No chance you're getting a taste, though. This spreads for the king and his court, not dusty tag-alongs like you. You shift your focus to the king's entourage. Nobles, advisors, maybe a poet or two, all nibbling on snacks from the carrier's stash. They're chatting, laughing, but you notice the tension in their eyes. Pleasing the king is a full-time job, and his mood swings could hinge on whether the almonds are roasted just right. You spot a carrier slipping with a fresh basket, this one packed with what looks like dried fish. The king gestures for it, and the room holds its breath as he inspects a piece. He nods, and everyone relaxes. You exhale too, realizing you were just as nervous. This is the snack army's power. They don't just feed the king. They keep the whole court's vibe in check. Outside, the march is gearing up again, horns blaring in the distance. You linger a moment, watching the king toss back another grape. You're struck by the absurdity of it all. A whole unit of trained soldiers just to keep this guy's snack game on point. But it's working. The king looks content. His court's buzzing and the army's ready to roll. You slip out of the tent, back into the blinding sun, and rejoin the snack carriers as they prep for the next leg. They're checking baskets, tightening straps, and you notice Fig Guy giving that young apprentice a quick pep talk. You're starting to respect these guys, not just for their hustle, but for thriving under this bizarre pressure. The column's moving now, and you fall in step, wondering how they keep this culinary circus running across a desert. The ground's getting rougher, and you're sweating through your imaginary tunic. The carriers don't flinch, though. Their focus is ironclad. You're hooked on their world, this strange blend of duty and decadence. The king's tent fade behind you, but its shadow looms large. Every basket, every jar, is a piece of his mobile empire, and you're eager to see how the snack army pulls it off. Dust swirls. The march continues, and you keep pace, ready for the next glimpse into Assyria's weirdest logistical triumph. You're still marching with the snack army, the Assyrian sun scorching your neck as the column snakes through a parched valley. The air is thick with dust, and you're squinting to keep the carriers in sight, their baskets bobbing like beacons in the haze. The crunch of gravel underfoot blends with the clink of clay jars, and you're starting to feel the rhythm of this bizarre operation. Now, you're diving into the logistics marvel that keeps the king's snacks flowing across deserts and war zones. It's not just about hauling figs and wine. It's a masterclass in ancient supply chains, a system so tight it can make a modern quartermaster jealous. You're about to see how the snack army turns chaos into culinary clockwork. The terrain's brutal. Rocky patches give way to soft sand that sucks at your sandals. You notice the carriers adjusting their strides, their loads balanced with a grace that screams practice. Up ahead, a grizzled guy. Let's call him Jarman, for the stack of sealed pots strapped to his back, pauses to check a clay tablet. It's scratched with cuneiform, probably Italia supplies, or a route plan. You lean closer, catching a whiff of olive oil from his pots, and realize this isn't just grunt work. These guys are running a mobile warehouse, tracking every almond and date from Nineveh to wherever the king's latest conquest takes them. You smirk, thinking of Jarman as the world's first snack logistician. Assyrian military logistics were legendary, even by ancient standards. Cuneiform records from the reign of Tiglath-Pileser III describe supply chains that kept armies fed across vast empires, with depots stocked by local tributes and royal farms. The snack army was a niche but critical cog in this machine, ensuring the king's personal pantry never ran dry. You watch Jarman signal to another carrier, who unloads a basket of barley cakes onto a cart pulled by a donkey. The cart's part of a relay system, you figure. Snacks move from carts to carriers to the king's tent in a seamless chain. It's like Amazon Prime, but with donkeys and a side of royal tantrums. You chuckle, imagining the king rage quitting a siege because his figs were late. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some tablets suggest the snack army used early refrigeration tricks, like burying jars of wine or yogurt in damp riverbank clay to keep them cool. You picture Jarman digging a quick pit at a campsite, tucking in a pot of fermented goat cheese like it's his baby. It's low-tech genius, and you're impressed despite yourself. The carriers are moving again, and you trail them past a line of carts loaded with more baskets. You spot reed stuff between jars to prevent breakage. Another clever touch. These guys aren't just hauling snacks. They're engineering solutions to keep them king-worthy in a desert. You're starting to see why the Assyrians dominated. Details like this gave them an edge. Historians still argue whether the snack army's logistics were a practical necessity or a symptom of Assyrian overreach. Some say it was brilliant, a way to keep the king's court functional on the move. Others argue it diverted resources from frontline troops, a sign of decadence that weakened the empire long-term. You're not sure where you land as you watch a carrier wipe sweat from his brow, then double-check a basket straps. The effort's undeniable, but you can't help wondering if a simpler snack setup would have sufficed. Maybe the king didn't need imported pomegranates to crush his enemies. You catch Jarman's eye, and he gives you a curt nod, like you're part crew now. You're not, but you keep pace, feeling the weight of their mission. The column halts briefly at a dry riverbed, and you watch the carriers regroup. A few unpack small tools, wooden wedges, linen cloths, to secure their loads to the next leg. You overhear a snippet of their chatter, something about a shortcut that'll shave hours off the march. It's clear they know the terrain, maybe better than the regular soldiers trudging nearby. You spot that young apprentice from earlier, the one struggling with his basket. He's helping an older carrier now, learning the ropes, and you feel a twinge of respect. This job's a grind, but it's also a craft honed over years of trial and error. You imagine the horror stories they swap at night. Spilled wine, crushed cakes, a king's wrath. Bet they've got a few. The sun's dipping lower, casting long shadows, and you're grateful for the slight coolness. The snack army's still on point, their basket steady despite the uneven ground. You pass a soldier sharpening his spear, who glances at the carriers with a mix of amusement and envy. You grin. Bet he's thinking, at least I don't have to babysit the royal picnic. But you're starting to get the bigger picture. The snack army's logistics aren't just about food. They're about projecting power, keeping the king's aura intact no matter where he goes. A hungry king might falter, and in Assyria, faltering's not an option. You wipe dust from your eyes, marveling at the system's complexity. It's over the top, sure, but it works. The march resumes, and you stick with the carriers, their pace unrelenting. You're hooked on this logistical ballet, the way every step and strap is calculated. The king's out there somewhere, probably munching on those dates you saw in his tent, oblivious to the sweat behind them. But you're not. You're seeing the gears of an empire at work, and it's weirder and cooler than you expected. The valley stretches on, and you keep walking, ready to uncover more of the snack army's secrets. You're still trudging through the Mesopotamian dust, the snack army's steady march pulling you along like a tide. The sun's a bit lower now, painting the rocky valley in shades of amber, but the heat still clings to your skin. The carrier's baskets sway with each step, their contents, figs, nuts, maybe that weird pickled fish you smelled earlier, protected like sacred relics. You're starting to feel the grind of their pace, but your focus shifts to the tools of their trade. These aren't just baskets and jars. They're custom gear, engineered for the bizarre mission of keeping the king's snacks pristine across deserts. You're about to get up close with their kit to see the ingenuity behind this culinary caravan. You sidle up to the carrier, let's call her Olive Girl, for the stack of oil jars strapped to her frame. Her gear catches your eye. A wicker basket reinforced with leather strips, its interior lined with tightly woven reeds. You lean in, catching a whiff of sesame and wax, and notice the basket sealed with some kind of resin, probably to keep out moisture and bugs. It's not just a container. It's a fortress for snacks. Olive Girl adjusts a strap on her shoulder, a sturdy linen band padded with wool to prevent chafing. You're impressed. The Assyrians didn't mess around. This gear's designed to survive sandstorms, jolting carts, and the occasional clumsy apprentice. The Assyrians were masters of practical innovation, their empire built on details like this. Archaeological finds, like storage jars from Nimrud, show they use advanced pottery techniques, with double-walled vessels to insulate perishable goods. The snack army's equipment likely drew on similar tech, tailored for mobility. You watch Olive Girl check a small clay pot, its lid sealed with a wax plug stamped with a royal emblem. That's not just for show. It's a guarantee the king's olive oil hasn't been tampered with. You imagine the chaos if some grunt tried to sneak a sip. Bet Olive Girl's got a mean glare for thieves. You smirk, thinking of her as the guardian of the royal grease. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some sources hint the snack army used portable ovens, tiny bronze contraptions to warm flatbreads or roast nuts on the march. You picture a carrier stoking a mini fire at a campsite, carefully toasting sesame cakes while dodging sparks. It's like a proto-microwave, Assyrian style, and you can't help but chuckle. You spot a guy nearby, his basket rigged with a wooden frame to hold jars upright. Another clever touch. The frame's got notches, maybe to track inventory, and you realize this gear's not just functional. It's a system, every piece designed to work together. You're starting to see the snack army as less of a joke and more of a logistical symphony. Historians still argue whether this specialized gear was a stroke of genius or an overcomplicated flex. Some say it was essential for preserving food in harsh conditions, ensuring the king's meals stayed fresh. Others call it excessive, arguing simpler containers would have done the job without the extra manpower. You're torn as you watch Olive Girl tighten a strap. Her movements quick and precise. The gear's impressive, but you wonder if the king really needed his oil jars to be wax-sealed museum pieces. You catch her eye, and she gives you a quick, appraising look, like she knows you're sizing up her kit. You nod respectfully. Message received. You're not here to judge. You shift your gaze to another carrier, this one hauling a stack of flat, wide baskets. They're layered with linen cloths, probably to keep dust off delicate goods like dried fruits or cakes. You notice small clay weights sewn into the cloth edges, a trick to keep them from flapping in the wind. It's the kind of detail that screams experience, learned from countless marches. You imagine the trial and error behind it. Some poor carrier watching a cloth fly off and scatter the king's figs into the sand. Bet that guy didn't get a second chance. You stifle a laugh, but it drives home the pressure these carriers face. Their gear's not just about function. It's about survival. The column's slowing now, probably nearing a campsite, and you watch the carriers prep their loads. Olive Girl pulls a small tool, a bronze awl, from her belt to pry open a jar's seal, checking its contents. The oil's still good, and she reseals it with a dab of wax from a tiny pot. You're struck by the care, the way every move is deliberate. This isn't just about snacks. It's about upholding the king's image, making sure his court feels like a palace even in the desert. You pass a regular soldier, his shield scuffed and dusty, who gives the snack crew a mock bow. You grin. Bet he's jealous of their fancy gear, or maybe he's just glad he's not stuck polishing jars. The valley's cooling as dusk creeps in, and you're grateful for the breeze. The snack army's gear, from baskets to straps to those clever cloth weights, is starting to feel like the real star of this show. You're hooked on the details, the way each piece solves a problem you'd never considered. The king's out there, probably munching on those sesame cakes you imagined earlier, oblivious to the craftsmanship behind them. But you're not. You're seeing the snack army's world through their tools, and it's a weirdly beautiful glimpse into Assyria's obsessive genius. The march continues, and you keep pace, eager to see what's next in this bizarre, brilliant operation. You're still weaving through the snack army's column, the Mesopotamian dusk settling like a soft blanket over the valley. The air's cooler now, carrying the scent of dry earth and the faint tang of olive oil from the carrier's baskets. The crunch of sandals on gravel is almost hypnotic, and you're matching the rhythm of these elite snack haulers as they march toward a campsite. Your focus shifts to the training grounds, the grueling crucible where these carriers are forged. You're about to step into their world of sweat-soaked drills, where recruits endure absurd tests to earn a spot in the King's Snack Squad. It's intense, it's weird, and you're right there, watching the chaos unfold. The column halts near a flat stretch of ground, tents already sprouting like mushrooms in the fading light. You spot a clearing where a dozen young men, recruits you guess, are gathered, their faces a mix of nerves and determination. A grizzled trainer, his tunic marked with clay seals, barks orders, his voice cutting through the evening hum. The recruits are lugging baskets loaded with rocks, weaving through a makeshift obstacle course of ropes and wooden stakes. You wince as one kid stumbles, nearly dropping his load, and the trainer's glare could melt bronze. This is the snack army's boot camp, where carrying figs becomes a high-stakes art form. You smirk, imagining telling your friends you watched Assyrian snack camp. Assyrian military training was brutal, designed to churn out disciplined soldiers for an empire that thrived on conquest. Cuneiform texts from Nineveh describe recruits running laps, wrestling, and mastering weapons under relentless scrutiny. The snack army's training, while less documented, likely borrowed from this playbook. With a twist, their battlefield was the king's table. You watch a recruit balance a jar on his shoulder while dodging a swinging rope, his jaw clenched with focus. It's clear these drills aren't just about strength. They're about precision, stamina, and not spilling the king's precious yogurt. You're starting to get why the carriers you've met, like Fig Guy or Olive Girl, move with such confidence. They've earned it. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some obscure records suggest recruits had to pass a spill test, carrying water-filled jars across uneven ground without losing a drop. You picture a nervous teen, hands shaking, praying his jar doesn't slosh as a trainer looms nearby. It's like the ultimate waiter's nightmare, and you can't help but chuckle. You spot a recruit now, maybe 15, struggling to keep a basket steady while the trainer tosses pebbles at his feet. The kid's sweating bullets, but he doesn't quit. You feel a pang of respect. This job's ridiculous, but it's no cakewalk. The trainer yells something in Akkadian, probably, "Don't drop the king's almonds, you donkey," and you bite back a laugh. Historians still argue whether the snack army's training was practical or an overblown ritual. Some say it ensured flawless service, critical for keeping the king's court happy on campaign. Others call it wasteful, arguing the empire could have spent those resources on actual soldiers. You're torn as you watch the recruits rerun the course, their baskets wobbling but intact. The effort's real, but you wonder if the king really needed his snack crew to be this hardcore. You catch the trainer's eye, and he gives you a quick nod, like you're here to scout talent. You're not, but you play along, scanning the recruits like you know what makes a top-tier fig hauler. The drills intensify as the sky darkens, torches flickering to life around the clearing. One recruit's tasked with carrying a stack of clay pots while reciting what sounds like a list, maybe an inventory of snacks. You imagine it's stuff like 10 figs, 5 cakes, 3 jars of honey, and you're impressed he doesn't trip over the words or the rocks. Another recruit's running laps with baskets strapped to his back, his face red but determined. You notice a few veterans, like Jarman from earlier, watching from the sidelines, their arms crossed. They're probably remembering their own training, or maybe they're betting on which kid will crack first. You grin. Bet Jarman's got stories of epic snack fails. The campsite's buzzing now. Soldiers setting up tents and cook fires, but you're glued to the training ground. The recruits are wrapping up, some doubled over, gasping, while others stand tall, hoping to impress. The trainer's voice softens slightly, offering a rare word of praise to a kid who nailed the course. You feel the weight of this moment. These recruits aren't just learning to carry snacks. They're vying for a role that could bring royal favor or ruin. You pass a regular soldier, his spear leaning against a tent, who gives the recruits a mock salute. You chuckle, bet he's glad he only had to train for stabbing, not snack balancing. The stars are out now, and you're starting to feel the day's exhaustion in your bones. The snack army's training is a wild mix of discipline and absurdity, and you're hooked on its intensity. The king's out there somewhere, probably munching on those dates you saw in his tent, clueless about the sweat behind them. But you're not. You're seeing the making of the snack elite, and it's a gritty, fascinating glimpse into Assyria's obsessive world. The recruits disperse, and you rejoin the carriers, ready for the next piece of this bizarre puzzle. You're back with the snack army, the Mesopotamian night, wrapping the campsite in a cool, starry hush. Torches flicker, casting shadows on the tents, and the air carries a scent of smoke and roasted barley. The carriers are settling in, their baskets stacked neatly under a canvas awning. But you're still buzzing from the training ground's intensity. Now, your focus shifts to the battlefield itself, where the snack army's work isn't just about keeping the king happy, but about fueling morale during the chaos of Assyrian sieges. You're about to see how these carriers deploy their precious cargo under pressure, turning snacks into a weird kind of wartime glue. It's gritty, it's surreal, and you're right there, dodging the dust of war. You follow a group of carriers toward the edge of camp, where the terrain slopes into a wide plain. In the distance, you make out the faint glow of another encampment. enemy territory, maybe a rebellious city under siege. The air's tense, filled with the low hum of soldiers sharpening weapons and the occasional shout of commander. You spot your old friend Fig Guy, his basket now lighter, but still clutched tightly, moving with a small crew toward a cluster of royal tents. They're not heading for the king this time. They're delivering snacks to the frontline officers, the guys keeping the siege engines rolling. You fall in step, feeling the weight of the moment. These treats are about to play a role in war. Assyrian sieges were brutal, often lasting months, with armies encircling cities to starve them out. Reliefs from Nineveh show soldiers operating battering rams and scaling ladders, but morale was key to sustaining those grinds. The snack army, while not fighting, had a critical job, keeping the king and commanders fed, which trickled down to the troop spirits. You watch Fig Guy hand off a basket of dates and flatbreads to a grizzled officer, who nods gruffly. The officer tears into a bread, and you see his shoulders relax, just a fraction. It's not just food. It's a reminder of the empire's wealth, a taste of home in the middle of a siege. You smirk, thinking of it as ancient comfort food, with a side of propaganda. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some records suggest the snack army occasionally tossed surplus snacks to the troops, like an impromptu morale boost. You picture a carrier chucking handfuls of almonds into a crowd of sweaty soldiers, like a rock star tossing guitar picks. It's absurd, but you can imagine the cheers. You notice a younger carrier, maybe that apprentice you saw struggling earlier, passing out small clay cups of watered wine to a group of archers. They grin, slapping his shoulder, and you realize these carriers aren't just delivery guys. They're morale engineers, weaving a bit of normalcy into the chaos. You stifle a chuckle, wondering if the archers are toasting a victory or just surviving another day. Historians still argue whether the snack army's role in sieges was strategic or mostly symbolic. Some say their deliveries kept the chain of command sharp, ensuring clear-headed decisions. Others argue it was more about optics, reinforcing the king's image as a provider even in war. You're leaning toward strategy as you watch Fig Guy's crew move with quiet efficiency, their baskets emptying fast. A hungry officer might snap under pressure, and these snacks are a buffer against that. You catch Fig Guy's eye, and he gives you a quick, tired smile, like he knows the stakes. You nod back, feeling like you're a part of this odd wartime ritual. The siege camp's alive with activity. Soldiers hauling timber for siege towers, others chanting to keep their spirits up. You trail the carriers as they weave through the chaos, their steps sure despite the uneven ground. One guy's carrying a sealed jar, probably honey or oil, and you notice he's dodging sparks from a nearby cook fire, like it's second nature. You're impressed. These guys are pros, operating under the same stress as the fighters, but with zero glory. You overhear a snippet of their chatter, something about the king demanding extra cakes tonight. Bet that's got them scrambling, and you feel a twinge of sympathy. Their job's a grind, even if it sounds like a punchline. You pass a group of soldiers huddled around a small fire, munching on what looks like the snack army's handiwork. Crumbs of flatbread and a few stray dates. They're laughing, swapping stories, and you realize the carrier's work is doing its job. It's not just about filling bellies. It's about keeping the army human, grounded. You spot a regular soldier, his helmet dented, giving the carriers a respectful nod as they pass. You grin, bet he's thankful for the snacks, even if he'd never admit it. The night's deepening, and you're starting to feel the siege's weight, the way it presses on everyone. But the snack army keeps moving, their baskets a small, stubborn light in the dark. The carriers head back toward the main camp, their loads nearly gone. You stick with them, marveling at how they turn snacks into a wartime asset. The king's out there, probably in his fancy tent, oblivious to the hustle behind his evening munchies. But you're not. You're seeing the snack army's quiet power, the way they hold the line in their own weird way. The siege rumbles on, and you keep pace, ready to uncover more of this bizarre, vital operation. You're back in the Assyrian camp. The night air crisp as the siege's distant clamor fades into a low hum. Torches cast a warm glow over the tents, and you're weaving through the snack army's ranks. Their baskets now mostly empty after deliveries to the front line. The scent of dust and roasted sesame lingers, and you're still buzzing from seeing their work in the siege's chaos. Now, your focus narrows to the king's quirky snack obsessions, the bizarre, decadent treats he craves, like honeyed locust or spiced pomegranate paste. You're about to taste the royal menu, diving into the flavors that drive this whole snack army operation. It's weird, it's lavish, and you're right there, sniffing out the king's culinary quirks. You follow a carrier, let's call him Date Dude, for the sticky sweet bundle he's unloading, toward the royal tent, its crimson fabric glowing under torchlight. Inside, servants bustle, arranging platters for the king's late-night munchies. You slip closer, dodging a guard who's more focused on a spear than on you. The table's a feast of the eyes, piles of dried figs, clay bowls of glistening honey. And yep, there they are, crunchy amber-glazed locusts stacked like tiny trophies. The king, maybe Ashurbanipal this time, lounges nearby, popping one into his mouth with satisfied crunch. You grimace but can't look away. This is the snack army's payload, and you're about to explore its strange glory. Assyrian kings were known for lavish diets, with cuneiform menus from Nineveh listing everything from roasted game to imported fruits. The king's snacks, though, were next level, blending luxury with oddity. Locusts, a delicacy in Mesopotamia, were often candied in honey or spiced with sumac, a tangy kick that paired weirdly well with wine. You watch a servant offer the king a clay dish of pomegranate paste, thick and jewel red, probably mixed with barley flour for a chewy texture. It's not just food, it's a status symbol, hauled across deserts to prove the empire's reach. You smirk, imagining Date Dude's pride in delivering these locusts without a single wing out of place. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some tablets suggest the king's snack preferences were tied to omens. A priest might recommend honeyed locusts if the stars align for victory, or dates if the gods demanded humility. You picture a soothsayer squinting at the sky, declaring, "Locust tonight, or the campaign's doomed." It's half mystic, half absurd, and you stifle a chuckle. You notice Date Dude arranging a small bowl of roasted almonds, each one dusted with what smells like cumin. The king grabs a handful, and you're tempted to snag one yourself. But the guard's eyeing you now. You settle for inhaling the spicy aroma, wondering how almonds got so fancy in 700 BC. Historians still argue whether the king's snack obsessions were personal quirks or calculated displays of power. Some say they reflected his taste, shaped by a life of excess. Others argue they were propaganda, showcasing rare ingredients to all allies and enemies alike. You're leaning toward propaganda as you watch the king savor a locust, his nobles nodding like it's a divine experience. This isn't just a snack, it's a flex, and the snack army's the muscle behind it. You catch Date Dude's eye, and he gives you a quick, knowing nod like you get the game. You do, but you're still wrapping your head around eating bugs for clout. You shift your focus to the table's other offerings. There's a tray of sesame cakes, crumbly and sweet, probably baked in those portable ovens you heard about. You spot a jar of fermented fish sauce, Assyria's answer to ketchup, pungent enough to make your eyes water. The king dips a fig into it, and you wince, but he seems to love it. You're starting to see the snack army's challenge, not just hauling this stuff, but keeping it fresh and presentable. A servant refills the almond bowl, and you realize Date Dude's crew is always on standby, ready to replenish the spread. It's a high-wire act, and they're nailing it. The tent's buzzing with low chatter, nobles nibbling on the king's leftovers, their eyes flicking to him for approval. You notice a carrier slipping with a fresh basket, This one packed with what looks like dried apricots, their golden hue catching the torchlight. The king gestures for them, and the room holds its breath as he takes a bite. He nods, and everyone exhales. You're caught up in the tension, too, marveling at how a single apricot can carry so much weight. You pass a regular soldier outside, munching on plain barley bread, who gives the royal tent a wry glance. You grin. Bet he's dreaming of those locusts, or maybe he's just glad he's not stuck serving them. The night's deepening, and you're starting to feel the camp's rhythm, the way the snack army's work pulses through it. These quirky snacks aren't just food. They're the king's personality, his empire, distilled into every crunchy, sticky bite. You're hooked on the weirdness, the way a locust or a fig can mean so much. The king's still munching, oblivious to the hustle behind his treats. But you're not. You rejoin the carriers, their baskets ready for tomorrow's march, and keep pace, eager for the next slice of this bizarre, tasty saga. You're still immersed in the Assyrian camp, the night air thick with the scent of torch smoke and the faint sweetness of spilled honey. The royal tent's glow fade behind you as you trail the snack army back to their corner of the encampment, their baskets now mostly stowed for the night. The crunch of gravel underfoot keeps you grounded, but your mind's buzzing from the king's bizarre snack spread. Those honeyed locusts are hard to unsee. Now, you're diving into the shadowy world of snack politics, where these treats aren't just food but tools of diplomacy, swaying alliances and greasing the wheels of Assyrian power. You're about to uncover how a well-placed fig or a jar of oil could shift the empire's fate. It's sneaky, it's delicious, and you're right there, eavesdropping on the game. You settle near a cluster of carriers, their voices low as they repack baskets under a flickering torch. One guy, let's call him Oil Man, for the clay jar of olive oil he's sealing, mutters about a recent envoy from a rival kingdom. You catch a snippet. The king gifted the envoy a basket of rare snacks, and now they're on better terms. You lean closer, dodging a stray donkey that's sniffing for leftovers, and realize these carriers aren't just haulers. They're cogs in a diplomatic machine. The snack army's work extends beyond the king's table, carrying his influence to allies and enemies alike. You smirk, imagining Oil Man as an ancient foodie diplomat. Assyrian diplomacy was a high-stakes dance, with cuneiform letters showing kings exchanging gifts to seal alliances or avoid wars. Food was a common offering, especially rare or luxurious items that screamed wealth. The snack army likely curated these gifts, ensuring every basket was a flex of Assyrian abundance. You watch Oil Man hand off his jar to a servant, who's rushing into a tent where foreign dignitaries are camped. That oil pressed from olives grown in distant groves isn't just a condiment. It's a message. We're rich, we're powerful, play nice. You're starting to see why the snack army's precision matters. One subpar jar could sour a truce. Bet Oil Man's got nightmares about that. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some records hint that snack gifts were rigged with subtle power plays. A king might send a rival an overload of perishable treats, like fresh yogurt, knowing they'd spoil before delivery. A polite way to say, your logistics suck. You picture the snack army packing a gift basket with sly grin, fully aware it'll be a rancid mess by the time it reaches Babylon. It's diplomatic shade, Assyrian style, and you can't help but chuckle. You notice a carrier nearby, arranging a basket with extra care. Maybe it's headed for a touchy ally. The figs are polished, the jars gleaming, and you realize this is theater. Every snack a prop in the empire's drama. Historians still argue whether snack-based diplomacy was effective or just flashy posturing. Some say it built real trust, with shared meals fostering goodwill between rulers. Others call it a distraction, arguing that military might, not munchies, secured Assyria's alliances. You're leaning toward effectiveness as you watch the servant deliver Oil Man's jar to the dignitary's tent. A noble steps out, sniffing the oil with approval, and you catch a faint smile. That's one less enemy, maybe thanks to the snack. You catch Oil Man's eye, and he gives you a quick, almost inspiratorial nod, like you're in on the hustle. You're not, but you're starting to get the stakes. You shift your focus to the carrier's chatter, picking up whispers about a recent treaty sealed over a feast. The king had the snack army roll out a spread, dates, almonds, even those locusts you're still side-eyeing. That left the visiting prince speechless. You imagine the scene. Nobles toasting with wine from jar man's stash. The prince pretending he loves locusts to avoid offense. It's diplomacy by digestion, and the snack army's the backbone. You notice a younger carrier, maybe that apprentice from the training grounds, listening wide-eyed to the veteran stories. He's learning fast that his job's not just about hauling. It's about power, played out one basket at a time. The camp's quieting now, most soldiers asleep or on watch, but the snack army's still at it, prepping for tomorrow's march. You pass a regular soldier, his cloak dusty, who's munching on a scrap of flatbread. He glances at the carrier's fancy baskets and mutters something sarcastic. You grin. Bet he's jealous of their diplomatic gigs, or maybe he just wants a taste of that oil. You're starting to feel the night's chill, but the snack army's world is keeping you hooked. These snacks aren't just food, they're currency, leverage, a way to bend the world to Assyria's will. The king's out there, probably dreaming of his next conquest, clueless about the politics baked into his treats. But you're not. You keep pace with the carriers, ready for the next twist in this edible empire. You're still trudging through the Assyrian camp. The night air now sharp with a desert chill that makes you wish for a thicker tunic. The torches are burning low, their flickering light dancing on the stacked baskets of the snack army. You can still smell the faint tang of olive oil from Oil Man's diplomatic delivery, and the camp's quiet hum. Snoring soldiers, creaking carts. Feels almost soothing. But your focus is shifting to the harsh realities of the snack army's mission. You're about to face the desert challenges that threaten their precious cargo. Sandstorms, scorching heat, and treacherous terrain that could turn the king's snacks into a dusty disaster. It's grueling, it's chaotic, and you're right there, squinting through the grit. The carriers are prepping for tomorrow's march, their movements brisk despite the late hour. You spot your pal Fig Guy, checking the straps on his basket with a frown, like he's bracing for trouble. The camp's nestled in a valley, but you overhear a veteran carrier muttering about a storm-prone stretch ahead. You follow Fig Guy's crew as they huddle around a small fire, their faces lit by the glow. They're wrapping jars in extra linen, and stuffing reeds tighter between baskets. Tricks you recognize from their clever gear. But there's a tension in their voices, a shared understanding that the desert doesn't care about the king's appetite. You wipe imaginary sweat from your brow, already dreading the chaos to come. Assyrian campaigns often cross brutal landscapes, from the Zagros Mountains to the Syrian desert, and cuneiform records describe supply lines battered by weather and terrain. The snack army, tasked with keeping delicate goods like honey and yogurt intact, face unique nightmares. You watch Fig Guy test a clay seal on a wine jar, his fingers probing for cracks. A sandstorm could ruin that seal, turning the king's favorite vintage into a gritty slurry. You imagine the fallout. A grumpy monarch, a flawed carrier, maybe a whole city sacked just to vent his hangry rage. You smirk, but it's a nervous one. These guys are walking a tightrope over a very cranky lion. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some tablets suggest the snack army used storm scouts, runners who dashed ahead to spot bad weather and warn the crew. You picture a wiry kid sprinting through the dunes, squinting for dust clouds, all to save the king's almonds from a sandblasting. It's like a weather app, but with more cardio, and you can't help but chuckle. You notice a carrier nearby, maybe that young apprentice from the training grounds, tying a cloth over his basket with extra knots. He's probably heard horror stories of storms bearing entire loads, dates lost to the wind, jars shattered on rocks. You feel for him. This job's already tough without Mother Nature playing dirty. Historians still argue whether the Snack Army's desert struggles were a logistical triumph or a sign of overambition. Some say their ability to deliver under such conditions proved Assyria's organizational genius. Others argue it was reckless, diverting manpower to protect luxuries when basic supplies were stretched thin. You're torn as you watch Fig Guy's crew double-check their gear, their faces etched with focus. They're pulling it off, but at what cost? You catch Fig Guy's eye, and he gives you a grim nod, like he knows you're sizing up their odds against the desert. You nod back, feeling the weight of their gamble. The camp's stirring now, early risers prepping for dawn, but you stick with the carriers as they simulate a storm drill. One veteran tosses handfuls of dirt at a recruit's basket, shouting about wind gusts. The recruit stumbles but keeps his load steady, and you're impressed despite the absurdity. You imagine a real sandstorm. Blinding grit, howling winds. The carriers hunch over their baskets like they're shielding babies. You spot Oil Man, his precious jars now wrapped in wool, muttering a prayer to some god for clear skies. You're starting to get why these guys are so intense. One bad storm could undo days of work, and the king's not known for patience. You pass a regular soldier, his cloak dusted with sand, who's watching the carriers with a mix of pity and amusement. You grin, but he's glad his job's just to stab things, not to babysit figs in a tempest. The desert's looming, its vastness stretching beyond the camp's torchlight, and you're feeling its menace. The Snack Army's gear and training are solid, but nature's a wild card. You notice the apprentice again, his hands shaking as he ties another knot. A veteran claps his shoulder, and you feel a flicker of hope. These guys look out for each other, even when the odds suck. The stars overhead feel distant, uncaring, but the carriers keep working, their baskets a defiant stand against the chaos. You're hooked on this struggle, the way the Snack Army stares down the desert and keeps going. The king's out there, probably dreaming of his next locust snack, clueless about the storms his carriers face. But you're not. You're seeing their grit, their quiet heroism in a job that sounds like a joke but feels like a saga. The camp settles, and you stay with the carriers, ready for the next chapter of their dusty, daring mission. You're still in the Assyrian camp, the pre-dawn air sharp and cool, carrying the faint scent of dew and packed earth. The Snack Army's corner is a hive of quiet activity, their baskets gleaming under the last flickers of torchlight as they prep for the day's march. You can still feel the desert's looming threat from their storm-proofing hustle, and your sandals are gritty from trailing them. Now, you're stepping into a stranger corner of their world, the bizarre rituals that bless the king's snack hoard. You're about to join a surreal ceremony, where the carriers and priests turn figs and wine into sacred offerings, tying the king's appetite to the gods. It's weird, it's solemn, and you're right there, caught in the incense haze. You follow a small group of carriers, Olive Girl's among them, her oil jars carefully balanced, toward a clear patch of ground near the camp's edge. A low altar, rough-hewn from stone, sits under a canopy of linen, its surface dusted with ash. A priest, his robe embroidered with star patterns, stands muttering prayers, a bronze censer swinging in his hand, puffing clouds of myrrh. The carriers kneel, their baskets placed before the altar like offerings, and you crouch nearby, trying not to sneeze from the smoky air. This isn't just about snacks anymore. It's a full-on divine PowerPoint presentation, and you're wondering if the gods are as peckish as the king. Assyrian religion was deeply woven into daily life, with cuneiform texts describing rituals to appease gods like Ashur or Ishtar for everything from harvest to battles. Food was a common offering, believed to carry prayers to the heavens, and the king's snacks, as symbols of his power, were prime candidates. You watch Olive Girl uncover a jar, its wax seal gleaming, and hand it to the priest. He pours a trickle of oil onto the altar, chanting in Akkadian, something about sustaining the king's strength. You're struck by the gravity. Every drop's a plea for divine favor, and the snack army's cargo is a bridge between earth and sky. You smirk. Imagine the gods munching on spectral olives. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some obscure records suggest these rituals included snack oracles, where priests read omens in the way offerings burned or spilled. You picture priests squinting at a smoldering fig, declaring, "The gods demand more locusts." It's half mystic nonsense, half high-stakes catering, and you stifle a chuckle. You notice a carrier, maybe Date Dude from the royal tent, place a small pile of dates on the altar, his hand steady, but his eyes nervous. The priest burns one, and the flame flares bright, drawing murmurs from the group. You're not sure if that's a good sign or a bad one, but the tension's real. These snacks aren't just food, they're cosmic bargaining chips. Historians still argue whether these snack rituals were genuine spiritual acts or political theater. Some say they reinforce the king's divine mandate, tie his rule to the god's approval. Others call it propaganda, a way to keep the army and court in line by making even snacks seem sacred. You're leaning toward theater as you watch the priest sprinkle barley flour over the altar, his voice rising dramatically. It's impressive, but you can't shake the feeling it's a show for the carrier's morale. You catch Olive Girl's eye, and she gives you a quick, almost amused glance, like she knows it's a bit over the top. You nod back, feeling like you're in on the cosmic joke. The ceremony drags on, with more offerings, almonds, a splash of wine, even a sesame cake crumbled into the fire. You're starting to feel the chill, your imaginary tunic no match for the desert night. But you're glued to the scene. The priest's chants grow softer, and the carriers bow their heads, their baskets now blessed for the march. You wonder if they buy into this, or if they're just humoring the ritual to avoid trouble. Either way, it's clear the snack army's role isn't just logistical, it's symbolic, tying the king's appetite to the empire's divine swagger. You notice the apprentice from earlier, his eyes wide as he watches the priest, and you feel a pang of sympathy. Kid's got a lot to learn about this weird world. The camp's stirring now, dawn creeping over the horizon, painting the tents pink. You pass a regular soldier, his spear slung over his shoulder, who gives the altar a skeptical glance. You grin, but he's thinking, "My rations don't get priest, but the king's figs do?" You're starting to see the snack army's rituals as a microcosm of Assyria's excess, where even a date carries the weight of divine politics. The carriers pack up their baskets now sanctified, and you keep pace, marveling at the absurdity. The king's out there, probably still asleep, oblivious to the prayers poured over his snacks. But you're not. You're hooked on this blend of faith and food, ready for the next twist in the snack army saga. You're back with the snack army, the Mesopotamian dawn breaking in a blaze of pink and gold over the camp. The air's still crisp, but the scent of myrrh from that bizarre snack blessing ritual lingers in your memory, mixing with the dust kicked up by waking soldiers. The carriers are already moving, their baskets strapped and ready, their faces set with a focus you've come to recognize. You're still reeling from the altar's smoky drama, but now your attention shifts to the bigger picture, how the snack army stacks up against the food systems of rival empires. You're about to compare Syria's snack obsession with the culinary logistics of neighbors like Babylon or Egypt, seeing who else turned food into a military flex. It's nerdy, it's tasty, and you're right there, sizing up the competition. You fall in step with Jarman, his stack of clay pots clinking softly as the column starts its march. The terrain's flattening out, the valley giving way to open plains, and you can feel the rhythm of the journey settling in. You overhear Jarman chatting with another carrier about a Babylonian envoy who bragged about their own king's feasts. It's got you curious. Did Babylon have its own snack army? What about Egypt or the Hittites? You imagine Jarman rolling his eyes at the idea of anyone outdoing Assyria's snack game, and you smirk, eager to dig into how these empires fed their rulers on the move. Assyria's military logistics were top tier, with cuneiform records boasting of supply chains that kept armies fed across vast campaigns. The snack army was a quirky subset dedicated to the king's personal table, but other empires had their own systems. Babylon, for instance, relied on temple networks to stockpile grain and dates, with priests doubling as quartermasters for royal campaigns. You picture a Babylonian king munching on date cakes, but without the specialized flair of Assyria's snack crew. Egypt, meanwhile, leaned on Nile-powered agriculture, their armies hauling bread and beer in massive clay vats. You watch Jarman adjust a pot of olive oil, its wax seal gleaming, and realize Assyria's edge with precision, custom gear, train carriers, even those storm scouts you chuckled about. Nobody else seems as extra. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some Egyptian records mention beer runners, soldiers tasked with sprinting jugs of barley beer of pharaohs during desert marches. You imagine a sweaty Egyptian grunt, dodging dunes to deliver a frothy jug, only to get a nod from a sun-baked king. It's not quite the snack army's polished hustle, and you stifle a laugh, picturing Jarman's smug grin if he heard about it. You notice a carrier nearby, maybe Olive Girl, checking a basket of sesame cakes. Assyria's answer to Egypt's beer, but fancier. The cakes are wrapped in linen, protected like treasures, and you're starting to see why Assyria's snack system feels like a flex. It's not just food, it's a statement. Historians still argue whether Assyria's snack army was a unique innovation or just a variation on regional norms. Some say it was a standout, reflecting Assyria's obsessive control over every detailed empire. Others argue that Babylon and Egypt had similar setups, just less documented, and Assyria's records exaggerate their own genius. You're leaning toward uniqueness as you watch Jarman's crew move like a well-oiled machine, their baskets swaying in perfect sync. Babylon's priests or Egypt's beer runners sound cool, but they lack the snack army's bespoke vibe. You catch Jarman's eye, and he gives you a quick nod, like he knows you're comparing empires. You nod back, impressed by Assyria's snack swagger. You shift your focus to the march, the carriers weaving past carts loaded with regular supplies, barley, dried meat, nothing as fancy as their cargo. You wonder how Persia or the Hittites handled royal meals. Persian kings later on had table attendants for lavish feasts, but their campaigns relied on local foraging, not a dedicated snack crew. Hittite records are spottier, mentioning clay tablets with food tallies, but no hint of an elite unit like this. You imagine a Hittite king gnawing on plain bread, jealous of Assyria's locusts and oil. You grin, but it drives home the snack army's niche. They're a product of Assyria's wealth and paranoia, ensuring the king's table never falters, no matter the rival. The sun's climbing, warming your face, and you pass a regular soldier, his shield slung over his back, munching on a hunk of barley bread. He glances at the carrier's baskets and mutters something sarcastic. You chuckle, but he's heard the Babylonian envoys boast and thinks Assyria's still winning the snack wars. You're starting to feel the march's grind, but the snack army's precision keeps you hooked. They're not just outdoing rivals. They're setting a standard, making every fig and jar a tiny triumph. The king's out there, probably plotting his next conquest, clueless about how his snacks stack up against Egypt's beer. But you're not. You keep pace, ready for the next layer of this culinary saga. You're still marching with the snack army, the Mesopotamian sun now high, baking the plains into a shimmering haze. The air's thick with dust and the faint sweetness of figs, and your sandals are starting to feel like they're melting into the ground. The carriers, unfazed, keep their baskets steady, their strides as precise as ever. You're still mulling over how Assyria's snack game outshone Babylon's priests or Egypt's beer runners, but now your focus shifts to the long game, the snack army's legacy, how their obsessive logistics shaped military supply chain for centuries. You're about to trace their influence from dusty Assyrian camps to the armies of later empires. It's nerdy, it's epic, and you're right there connecting the dots through time. The columns moving slower now, the terrain turning rocky, and you stick close to Date Dude, his basket of sticky sweet cargo swaying gently. You notice him glance at a clay tablet tucked into his belt, maybe a tally of deliveries, and it hits you. This level of organization wasn't just for show. The snack army systems, inventory checks, custom gear, those storm scouts you chuckled about, were a blueprint for keeping armies fed on the move. You imagine Date Dude's tablet as a tiny seed, its logic sprouting into supply chains of Rome or Persia. You smirk, picturing a Roman quartermaster cursing as he tries to match Assyria's snack-level precision. Assyria's logistical prowess was a cornerstone of its dominance, with cuneiform records detailing supply depots and relay systems that kept armies operational across empires. The snack army, though a niche unit, embodied this obsession with control, ensuring the king's table was a microcosm of imperial efficiency. You watch Date Dude adjust his basket, tucking a stray date back into place, and realize their work wasn't just about feeding the king. It was about proving systems could bend nature and distance to an empire's will. Later empires, like the Persians with their royal road or the Romans with their grain fleets, built on similar principles. Track everything, plan for chaos, never let the boss go hungry. You're starting to see the snack army as unsung architects of military logistics. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some scholars suggest medieval European armies, centuries later, used victuallers who echoed the snack army's role, hauling delicacies for kings on crusade. You picture a sweaty knight in 1100 CE, munching on preserved fruit from a carrier who make Fig Guy proud, and you stifle a laugh. It's a stretch, but the idea that Assyria's snack hustle influenced far-off campaigns is oddly satisfying. You notice a carrier nearby, maybe Olive Girl, checking a jar seal with the same care you saw in that blessing ritual. Her focus feels timeless, like it could belong in any army, any era, and you're struck by the snack army's quiet reach across history. Historians still argue whether the snack army's logistics were a direct ancestor of later systems or just a flashy footnote. Some say their methods, specialized units, mobile supply chains, set a template for empires like Rome or Byzantium. Others argue they were too niche, their influence diluted by broader Assyrian practices. You're leaning toward ancestor as you watch Date Dude's crew pause to redistribute their loads, ensuring no carriers overburdened. It's a small move, but it screams efficiency, the kind that can inspire a Roman legion supply officer. You catch Date Dude's eye, and he gives you a quick nod, like he knows you're piecing together their legacy. You nod back, feeling like you're glimpsing history's backstage. You shift your focus to the broader march, the carriers weaving past carts piled with regular supplies, barley, dried fish, nothing as fancy as their cargo. You wonder how far the snack army's ideas traveled. Alexander the Great's armies, centuries later, had mobile bakeries and pack animals for officers' meals. Sounds familiar, right? Even Mongol hordes, with their dried meat and portable rations, shared the snack army's knack for keeping leaders fed in chaos. You imagine a Mongol Khan gnawing on jerky, indirectly thanking Assyria's obsession with locusts and oil. You grin, but it drives home the snack army's impact. They weren't just hauling snacks. They were stress-testing systems that outlived their empire. The sun's brutal now, and you're sweating through your imaginary tunic. You pass a regular soldier, his spear glinting, who's munching on a scrap of bread and eyeing the carrier's baskets with envy. You chuckle, bet he'd kill for a taste of Date Dude's stash, or maybe he's just glad he's not stuck planning their routes. You're starting to feel the weight of history, the way the snack army's hustle ripples through time. They're not just a quirky footnote. They're a spark that lit bigger fires. The king's out there, probably munching on those blessed figs, clueless about his carrier's place in the grand arc of logistics. But you're not. You keep pace, ready for the next piece of this sprawling, savory story. You're still trudging alongside the snack army, the Mesopotamian sun now a relentless glare, turning the plains into a dusty oven. The air's heavy with the scent of sweat and the faint sweetness of spilled wine, and your sandals are caked with grit from a march. The carriers, ever steady, keep their baskets balanced, their faces etched with a quiet resolve you've come to admire. You're still buzzing from tracing their legacy through history's supply chains, but now your focus turns inward, to the unsung heroes of this operation, the individual snack carriers, forgotten by time, who hauled the king's treats through heat and chaos. You're about to honor these nameless grunts, piecing together their lives and sacrifices. It's poignant, it's human, and you're right there, walking in their dust. You fall in step with a wiry carrier. Let's call him Almond Guy. For the basket of roasted nuts, he's cradling like a newborn. His tunic's frayed, his hands calloused, and you notice a faint scar across his knuckles, maybe from a drop jar or a desert mishap. He's not the flashy type, not like the king's glittering court, but there's a pride in his posture, a sense he knows his role matters. You wonder about his story, where he's from, how he landed this gig, what he dreams of when the march ends. These carriers are the backbone of the snack army, yet history's cuneiform tablets rarely name them. You feel a pang, determined to give Almond Guy and his crew their due. Assyrian records glorify kings and generals, but the grunts, like these carriers, get barely a footnote. Archaeological finds, like labor graves near Nineveh, suggest many were low-born, possibly conscripted from villages or trained from childhood for specialized roles. The snack army, with its elite status, likely drew from skilled workers, not nobles, but their lives were grueling. You watch Almond Guy adjust his basket, his eyes scanning the rocky path ahead. He's probably marched thousands of miles, dodged sandstorms, maybe even faced bandits, all to keep the king's almonds crisp. You imagine his quiet moments, maybe joking with Fig Guy over campfire, or cursing the day he signed up for this. You smirk, but it's a fond one. These guys are the real MVPs. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some minor tablets hint that carriers occasionally got snack bonuses, scraps of the king's leftovers as a rare perk. You picture Almond Guy sneaking a locust when no one's looking, savoring a taste of the royal life. It's a small rebellion, and you can't help but chuckle, hoping he got away with it. You notice the young apprentice from earlier, still tagging along, his own basket lighter, but his face heavy with exhaustion. He's learning from veterans like Almond Guy, soaking up their tricks and maybe their gripes. You feel for him. This job's a grind, with little glory beyond the king's fleeting nod. Yet they keep going day after dusty day. Historians still argue whether the snack army's carriers were valued specialists or exploited labor. Some say their training and proximity to the king gave them status, maybe even a shot at promotion. Others argue they were disposable, their skills overshadowed by the empire's endless demands. You're leaning toward exploited, as you watch Almond Guy wipe sweat from his brow, his movement mechanical but precise. He's good at this, damn good, but you doubt he's getting a parade. You catch his eye, and he gives you a quick, weary nod, like he knows you're rooting for him. You nod back, wishing you could tell him his work's not forgotten, at least not today. You shift your gaze to the other carriers. Each a story history didn't bother to write. There's a woman, maybe Olive Girl's sister, her basket strapped tight, her stride unflinching despite the heat. Another guy, older, limps slightly but keeps pace, his jar sealed with the care of a craftsman. You imagine their lives outside this march, families waiting in dusty villages, or maybe no one at all, just the next delivery to survive. You spot a carrier pause to help the apprentice adjust his load, a small act of kindness that hits you hard. These aren't just workers, they're a team bound by a shared mission that's equal parts absurd and vital. You're starting to see them as the heart of the snack army, not just its hands. The march slows as the column nears a riverbank, probably a spot to restock water. You pass a regular soldier, his armor dented, who's munching on plain barley bread and eyeing the carrier's baskets with a mix of envy and respect. You grin. Bet he's got stories of his own. But today, Guy's crew steals the show. You're feeling the weight of their anonymity, the way time erased their names but not their hustle. The king's out there, probably popping dates without a thought for the hands that brought them. But you're not. You're hooked on these forgotten heroes, ready to carry their story a little further as the march rolls on. You're still with the snack army, but the Mesopotamian plains feel heavier now, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows over the dusty march. The air's thick with the scent of dry earth and the faint tang of spilled wine, and your imaginary tunic clings to your skin from the day's grind. The carriers, their baskets lighter after deliveries, move with a weary rhythm, their faces etched to the toll of countless miles. You're still carrying the weight of those unsung heroes, Guy, Oliver, and the rest, whose names history forgot. Now, you're watching the snack army's world unravel as the Assyrian Empire itself crumbles, their once proud mission fading into the sands. You're about to witness the end of their saga, a slow dissolve that mirrors the empire's fall. It's somber, it's haunting, and you're right there, feeling the empire's last breaths. The column's pace is sluggish, the terrain littered with jagged rocks that force the carriers to step carefully. You stick close to Date Dude, his basket now half empty, his eyes scanning the horizon like he senses trouble. The camp's quieter these days, whispers of lost battles and rebellious provinces filtering through the ranks. You overhear a carrier, maybe Jar Man, mutter about supply shortages, how the royal farms aren't sending enough figs or oil. It's a far cry from the lavish feast you saw in the king's tent, and you feel a knot in your chest. The snack army's precision, their whole reason for being, is starting to fray, and you're wondering how much longer they can hold on. Assyria's collapse, around 612 to 609 BCE, was a brutal unraveling, with Nineveh sacked by Medes and Babylonians, as cuneiform chronicles grimly recount. The snack army, tied to the king's court, likely dissolved as the empire fractured, their logistics no match for rebellion and invasion. You watch Date due to just his basket, his movement still precise but slower, like he's carrying the empire's weight, not just Date's. You imagine their final days, carriers scrambling to deliver dwindling supplies, their blessed jars and storm-proof baskets useless against a tide of enemies. It's not just snacks at stake now. It's survival, and you're starting to feel the desperation in the air. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some archaeological finds, like broken clay seals and ruined palaces, suggest carriers try to protect their cargo even as cities burned, maybe hiding jars in cellars or smuggling them to fleeing nobles. You picture Date Dude, stubborn to the end, tucking a last jar of honey under his tunic as Nineveh's walls fall. It's absurdly heroic, and you stifle a bittersweet chuckle, wishing you could pat him on the back. You notice the apprentice, his young face drawn, clutching his basket like it's all he has left. The veterans, Fig Guy, Olive Girl, are quieter now, their camaraderie strained by the empire's cracks. You feel for them, these keepers of a fading dream. Historians still argue whether the snack army's end was a symptom of Assyria's overreach or just collateral damage in its fall. Some say their lavish logistics drained resources, hastening the empire's collapse. Others argue they were victims, their skills irrelevant once the king's court vanished. You're leaning toward victims as you watch Date. Dude's crew pause to redistribute their loads, a flicker of their old efficiency shining through. They're trying, but the world's moving on, and you can't help but feel a pang for their lost purpose. You catch Date Dude's eye, and he gives you a faint, resigned nod, like he knows you see the end coming. You nod back, your throat tight. The march halts near a dry riverbed. The camp setting up with less bustle than before. You watch the carriers stack their baskets, some cracked, others half full. The altar from that ritual is gone. The priests scattered, and you realize the gods aren't answering anymore. You pass a regular soldier, his armor patched, who's chewing on a stale crust and ignoring the carriers entirely. You force a grin. Bet he's too tired to envy their figs now. The sky's turning purple, and you're feeling the weight of Assyria's twilight, the way it's swallowing the snack army's hustle. You imagine their gear buried in the sand, their tablets crumbling, their names lost. It's heavy, but you're grateful to have walked with them this far. As the camp settles, you linger with the carriers, their silhouettes blending into the dusk. You're starting to feel sleepy, the march's rhythm fading like a lullaby. The snack army story is ending, but you're carrying their memory, a quiet tribute to their absurd, vital work. The king's gone, his locusts and oil forgotten, but you're not ready to let go just yet. You take a slow breath, letting the desert stillness wrap around you, ready to ease into the night. The stars are out now, brighter than you expected, dotting the vast Mesopotamian sky like a gentle promise. You're sitting by a dying campfire, the embers glowing soft and warm, their faint crackle blending with the distant hum of the camp. The snack army's tents are quiet, their baskets stowed, their march paused the night. You feel a calm settling in, heavy but kind, like a blanket draped over your shoulders. Their story, the sweat, the figs, the fleeting triumphs, drifts into the background, softening with each breath you take. You're safe here, in this moment, the desert's vastness a cradle for your thoughts. Let the day's dust settle. Let the weight of empires fade. Picture the carriers resting, their callous hands still, their dreams carrying them to simpler places, a village, a river, a meal shared with friends. You're drifting too, the stars blurring into a gentle haze, their light whispering that it's okay to let go. The snack army's gone, but their hustle lingers, a quiet hum in your mind, easing you toward sleep. Breathe slow, feel the cool air, and let the night carry you. You're done marching, done chasing kings. Just rest now, wrapped in the desert's embrace, and drift into sweet, endless dreams.